he installed a dash cam on his little car. So that way, when he would go, he actually asked her several times if she would meet him at the police department to exchange custody, but she would
Okay.
never do that. So he installed a dash cam on the car, and when he picked up my grandson, he would park in a way where the camera footage would show everything that
Mhm.
happened with him at the door and on the porch. And he was never going by himself though, because he told me, he said, Mom, he said, Paige bought a gun, and honestly, I'm afraid she's going to shoot me. And so he would never go there to pick up my grandson by himself. And I honestly, I don't know why, but that time he decided to go alone.
You are now tuning in to the All Things Good podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the All Things Good podcast. I'm your coach and your host, Giovanna Cirillo. Today, we're going to be discussing murder to message. And you're probably wondering, what exactly are we talking about? Well, today, we're going to have a lovely guest by the name of Jackie Suzanne Rubio, who has been through hell. And somehow she is still standing. She's faced the murder of her son, the betrayal of court systems that failed her, and the gut wrenching loss of contact with her grandson. Through it all, she's still standing. She has been through hell and back. And today we are going to be talking to Jackie. We're going to hear her story and how she is using the death and the murder of her son to help others and just overcome in life. So help me by welcoming Jackie. Jackie, how are you today?
Good. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. That's a wonderful introduction. I really appreciate it. And I'm really grateful to be here to talk to your audience and on your platform. I
Jackie,
appreciate you.
thank you, first of all, for being willing to share your story. I don't know how long ago this took place, but either way, it doesn't matter because grief and trauma and loss is loss, right? There's no timeline on that. So thank you so much for being a guest and being willing to share your story. And before we get into the questions, how are you today? How are you feeling? How is your spirit, your emotions? Let's talk about it.
Great. Well, thank you for the opportunity to do that too. So to answer your first question, December 16th was 3 years that my son was murdered. So we, and December 2nd would have been his 31st birthday.
Wow.
So it was a tumultuous time for me. And of course it's the holidays too. And I actually chose to launch the book I wrote from Murder to Messages on December 16th. And so it was this real roller coaster of a lot of activity, a lot of, positive things with the book, and a lot of people reaching out to tell me that they liked the book. But then, there was still just this really big part of me that was remembering. My body was remembering. My family was remembering, just the tragedy and how difficult that time of year was for us. So, um, I feel good about getting through Christmas the way that we got through it. And then um I feel kind of tired today actually. It's just a big relief and release of the past behind me. Um
Right.
but there's also quite a bit of sadness this time of year. It's like I just got through Christmas, I just got through the death of my son, and now I'm really like feeling the emptiness and the hole of not being able to have contact with my grandson, who is his son. So, and then obviously the excitement of coming on your show and being able to talk to audience and also telling my story and telling Devin's story. So yeah, it's just this really big mixture of positive emotions and sadness and my body remembering things. So thanks for
Of
asking.
course. Oh, wow. So I didn't even realize that the anniversary of your son's murder was just a month ago. I mean, when this podcast releases, it'll probably be, a couple of weeks out, but just the fact that you just had the anniversary of your deaf son. So I just, I send my condolences, and I know that grief, when it comes to grief, there's always waves, right? Where we have moments where we're good, and then suddenly, the holidays come or something happens and you're thinking about it all over again as if it was the first time you ever, experienced the loss of your son. So, I just thank you for coming on, to being so bold and so strong to share your story.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. And so, are you comfortable with sharing what took place? I know, I mean, obviously you're here to share the story, but are you comfortable with sharing the details of what happened?
Yes, so it was December 16th of 2022, and there was quite a bit that led up to that day. My son, his name is Devyne, and he's like 6'4", super tall, super handsome kid, but really shy. He was very shy, and he was also kind of like he wasn't real social, and so he had met his wife in youth group from our church, and then they got married really early, and she got pregnant right away, and it was just an instant like no go in the marriage. As soon as
Mm,
she had the baby, my son wasn't allowed to sleep in the bedroom with them. Like she was really controlling. He wasn't allowed to bring the baby, anywhere really. And so that set the tone for the marriage and for the whole circumstances of him, trying to be a father to this baby. So right away they had these issues, and she separated from him. It wasn't anything he wanted, but she ended the marriage. And it wasn't that long after that she actually had a same-sex partner, and it became even more controlling at that point. Like she dictated whether he could see my grandson, she dictated his custody, everything about it, and she breastfed till my grandson was like about 3.5. And so in the state of Oregon, that stopped my son from having overnight visits. So
oh, wow.
she was able to dictate that he couldn't even have any, overnight visits with him because she continued to breastfeed. And they'd kind of done okay. Co-parenting went on about their lives, and he actually got a fiance. He was so happy. I was so happy for him. He was really starting to come out of his shell. And then they started having custody issues. She stopped letting him go to visits, and Devyne had done what he was supposed to do to legally make sure that he could, have visits with his child. And
Okay.
so there were some things that went on um, leading up to what happened. So she started saying that, like giving accusations, saying that Devyne was doing things, that he was physically harming my grandson, that he was, trying to break into their home, just some really um, outlandish accusations. I mean, some of them were crazy. Like she said that he threw my grandson down 5 flights of stairs. Well, she had my grandson at the doctor like literally twice a week. If there would have been any kind of major impact like that, the doctors would have found it. And also, there was really bizarre things like that. He put a gun to his head. Well, my son lived with his fiance, and they don't have a gun, and that he was like throwing beer bottles at him. Well, my son doesn't drink at all. Like we're talking at all. He doesn't drink.
Wow.
He never used any, he doesn't smoke weed, anything like that. So these were really easily disputed, things, that she was accusing him of. And he'd gone to court. He, went and got interviewed with all the law enforcement, everything. And he was able to get his visits back. And then at that time, what he did was he actually filed for full custody, because in the process of this, DHS's investigation and the cops' investigation, they were like, something isn't right with her. Something isn't right in that home. Something isn't right with her. And he began to get worried for what was going on in that house. So, um, she the court was kind of going his way, and I think she was having a hard time keeping an attorney. It seemed
Okay.
like we'd go to court and she'd have to get a new attorney. Things kept getting postponed and postponed because of that. And then it was August 16th. It was Christmas time. Um, his fiance and I were on the phone together, and we were making our Christmas plans. He got, his visitation back with Grayson, and I was going to go spend Christmas with them. And we were just like, where was I going to stay? Could my dog come? Just a real happy, uplifting vibe, if you can imagine, after almost a solid year of
Right.
this of this nonsense and what Devin was going through. So, we were on the phone, we were chatting, they were Christmas shopping, and then all of a sudden, about 15 minutes later, she called me back and she said, well, have you heard from your son? And I just assumed he was with her, and she was like, no, it's his day to pick up Grayson. And I have to tell you, so he was very, very scared of the ex-wife, of the accusations, of being put in the position that he was in, having to defend himself, fighting for custody for his son. And he installed a dash cam on his little car. So that way, when he would go, he actually asked her several times if she would meet him at the police department to exchange custody, but she would
Okay.
never do that. So he installed a dash cam on the car, and when he picked up my grandson, he would park in a way where the camera footage would show everything that
Mhm.
happened with him at the door and on the porch. And he was never going by himself, though, because he told me, he said, Mom, he said, Paige bought a gun, and honestly, I'm afraid she's going to shoot me. And so he would never go there to pick up my grandson by himself. And I honestly, I don't know why, but that time he decided to go alone. And I think it was
Ugh.
because, it was Christmas time, and his fiance was shopping with her family, and everybody was, so joyous that I don't think he wanted to pull somebody out of that to
Mhm.
do it. So, yeah, he went to the door with the camera rolling, and the door opened with no word spoken, and she opened fire on him. My,
Oh God.
yeah, my 7-year-old grandson was in the home at the time, and that was it. That's the last time that was his last day on this earth.
Wow. That I didn't expect to get so emotional with that. I mean, I know I'm a softie, but that, because to me, I'm thinking, I feel like everyone kind of sort of knows when their time is coming. Maybe, maybe not, but your son had a bad feeling. And I'm so glad that he installed that dash cam. So the dash cam caught everything.
Yes.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, Jackie, I am so sorry.
Yeah, and what the dash cam didn't catch, the 911 call caught.
Mm.
So they could still hear the bullets being fired on the 911 call. She was continuously shooting him. Yeah, I mean, there's just no words for it. And it was a tragedy, it was devastating. And then what transpired after that was, even so people just don't, they just can't believe it when I tell my story. They literally, and sometimes I can't believe it either. So, because they were in this custody dispute, and because she had full custody of the child, even though she shot and killed his father on video camera, the state of Oregon said that she maintained her custody rights, her parenting rights. So she was in jail awaiting trial, innocent until proven guilty, we would say. And I went to court. I fought. You have no idea how hard I fought for my grandson. All, like, I put myself in bankruptcy, all the money on legal fees trying to get, rights to my grandson. But I also, a big part of my story is I was just a massive alcoholic, and I had to deal with the loss of my son as an alcohol. I was sober for about 2.5 years, but I raised him when he was,
Mhm.
a teenager, as an alcoholic, a massive alcoholic too. So I had to really cope with that. And I had past criminal issues because of being an alcoholic. So that I had to deal with that in the courtroom. But
Mhm.
unfortunately, that wasn't even the problem. I didn't even get to that point of my issues because It's just the law. The law in Oregon says that she maintains custody. So when this first happened, we instantly went to an attorney. We instantly trying to, get custody of, or find where he was for one thing. And I found out the hard way that she gave him to her mother, who then brought him and made him go back and live in the home that this happened in, that his
Wow.
father was shot and killed in. It was one of the most difficult knowings of my life that this kid, had to go back into that home. He spent Christmas in that home. She wouldn't let him come, be with us during Christmas or anything like that. So, I got it. The first judge, said that, yes, I mean, we need to have a custody case. And they gave me temporary custody of him, which
Okay.
I mean, as hard as it was, like, to not have it now, I'm still just so grateful that I had that time period with him. Um,
Of
and
course.
so, but then she realized during the court case that she had prosecuted me 18 years before that in a case that she didn't remember, like nobody remembered, but the defense was able to tell her she couldn't be our judge anymore because of that relationship or whatever. And the new judge stepped in, took my grandson away, and dismissed the case. Said that
Wow.
there's no reason for this case because it's Oregon law that they get to keep custody no matter what. So I fought that judge, I fought the court system, and then I went to the state that the grandmother lives in, where my grandson is in. I tried to fight in that state, nothing, like nothing. So it's been almost 3 years since I've seen my grandson or talked to him.
I'm so sorry. That just sounds, and especially as a grandmother, grandmothers have a certain love for their grandkids. And not even that, you lost your son. So your grandson is an extension. He is an heir. He's, a
Yeah.
part of your son that
And
you're,
you look so much like my son. I
I can
mean, like,
imagine.
the resemblance is so much so I don't even get to see his growth and his change, and the stages that he's in now that could at least give me some memories of my son.
Exactly. And,
Yeah.
I'll keep you in prayer because there's no reason why you should not be able to see your grandson, especially with the loss of your son because of this woman. I
Yeah.
That is complete injustice. And I mean, despite of what Oregon, their system is, there should still be some type of communication with your grandson. So um, it was
Yeah, thank you. I
we can
could
get
use
into
all the
a
prayers.
whole riot for that because I am all about justice. So I'm like, there has to be a way. But okay, so you haven't spoken to your grandson, but the mother of your grandson is still detained, right?
Incarcerated. Yeah. So um this is like another piece of the puzzle, and just, I mean, there like this point in my life where there's just nothing about this that I can ever find any good in or any comfort in. So um we were going to go to trial. I mean, we have video of it. We have, and she was claiming extreme emotional distress. And not one human being on the face of this earth would ever get on a stand and say that my son was scary, violent. I mean, this kid didn't even have a freaking speeding ticket on his record. I mean, he was like the most straight arrow human being on the face of the earth, so they would have never been able to find, anything that would be able to justify extreme emotional distress or defense or anything like that. Well, so we were very prepared to go to trial, and then right at the last minute, right before trial, the assistant DA quit. So it left one DA for the entire county, and he decided to plea deal. They let
Wow.
her have manslaughter,
Mm.
even though she shot and killed my son, put 9 bullets in him. They let her plead to manslaughter. So she will receive a mandatory of 10 years, and then after that, she'll be eligible for parole and good behavior.
Wow.
Yeah.
9 bullets and only received manslaughter.
Yeah.
Listen,
Yeah.
listen, Jackie, I don't want to ruffle your feathers here. So I already know there's a lot of emotion, frustration, and anger when it comes to that situation. And I am so sorry that you had to go through that and are still grieving the loss of your son. Ugh. What has been the hardest truth that you have had to face in the aftermath that no one prepared you for?
Well, this one, like, I really want to make sure that everybody understands, like, this, there's no way to go about this story without feeling the pain, the heaviness, the torture of it, the injustice of it. But I do really want people to understand that I've stayed sober through this. I've found blessings, I've found light, I've found love, I've found, a tribe, I've found support. So, there is inspiration in the story also. It's just in this part of it, there's just nothing good. I mean, you can dissect it till you're blue in the face, but everything and anything that could have been an injustice was. So I think that that's the biggest thing I walked away from was, in our lives, we're told that the police, that, the agencies, the DHS agencies, law enforcement, and the DA and all of that, like, those structures are in place, and they keep us safe, right? They
Right.
are what keeps our world going. But when something like this happens and you have to actually go through these systems, you have no idea how broken they are, but they are completely broken. There's It is absurd and unheard of, that we would have ran into the things that we ran into, like the Oregon law saying, like, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
If you shoot and kill somebody on video camera, you're still the custodial parent. Like,
Yeah.
there's no exceptions for that. So I think, like, what I wasn't prepared for was the amount of just in injustices that occur in our world, and also that really these people, they don't know what they're doing. The left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing.
Mm.
Like the um victims advocates, they couldn't help me because they didn't know what the DA was doing. The DA wasn't communicating. The DA didn't know what my son's password was to his telephone that we had given the sergeant, and that was the head up of the investigation the night that he was murdered. Like, they had
Wow.
to be able to go through and debunk some of what she was saying was happening, because they have the text messages right there that he never threatened her, that he never, anything. So yeah, I think that was such an eye opener for me, was just how chaotic and not very well put together our systems are. And it still makes me feel very, very unsafe.
And you know what? You're not alone. A lot of people feel the same way. There have been so many injustices throughout our time that it's like, where is the system that was supposed to be created to protect us? They are not protecting us.
Yeah.
And that's just, it's insane. It's insane that that law was there or still there. And I'm hoping that someone is fighting to change that because, it's injustice. There's no other word for it. Now,
Yeah.
you mentioned that in the situation, there's no hope, there's no good. But outside of that, you have been able to become resilient. You have been able to reshape the way you think and process. I mean, you were sober throughout this whole time. So, grief can isolate us. And how did losing not only your son, but access or communication to your grandson help you to reshape your life and just begin to transition things for you?
Well, I think one of the biggest things that was able to get me through, because like we said, there was just nothing good in this, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's not a piece of this that somehow you can lean on, that you can tuck into your heart, that you can, like, keep yourself held upright from it. So for me, in those really, really dark months, in those dark times, if there was even the smallest light, if the smallest, even like a little pretty flower, I would hold on to that. Just, I needed it so much. I needed
Mm-hmm.
something to just be grateful for, to feel love with, that I would find these things and I would hold on to them so much. And I really think, they talk about, mindfulness and, you live your life one day at a time. And I think I was literally forced into that position where I had to cling to even the smallest shred of light, of hope, of love. And I would cling to it, and I would grab it, and I would hold on to it as much as I could, because that was my lifeline. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that I got into a habit of just literally living that, day to day, of really just holding on to something and with a lot of gratitude.
I I love that. I love that you were looking for a silver lining and looking for just some type of light. And I have to say, like, kudos to you. You are strong, you are powerful to not even turn back into alcohol, knowing that that was part of your, the way that you would process things, just going into drinking and whatever else that you might have done. But the fact that you were strong enough not to go back to that route, I have to say, like, you go, girl. You go, girl. Because
Yeah.
someone, it would have brought anyone back to a place. I mean, a lot of people use alcohol, drugs, and all these things to process their grief. So what words of advice can you give for someone who has struggled with alcohol in the past and maybe going through something? um what ways can they begin to, I mean, obviously looking for a way of hope or looking for the light, but what other things can they do to kind of distract them from going towards that route?
Well, let me bring it back a little bit too. And it's definitely, I mean, I also in my younger years was addicted to meth, amphetamines too. So it can you can overcome addiction even more than just alcohol, even like harder stuff where people feel like they can't. And I'm not trying to sound condescending, but if I could stay sober through the murder of my child, through the horrible court cases, through losing my grandson, I feel like sobriety is touchable and attainable for anybody. So I really want
Yes.
that. And I feel like there was a few key aspects that I was able to stay sober. One was, you absolutely have to hold let people hold you. You have,
Mm,
I know, and grief, I know I isolated too, because I didn't want to get my tears, my sadness, my buzzkill all over anybody else because I was so sad. But you absolutely have to allow human beings to come in, hold you up, connect with you, shower love on you. And if it's not your family, or if it's not people who understand the grief you're in, then you will find that support. You will find those human beings that will do that for you. And I was so broken. I was past the point of being able to come close to holding my own head up, that I had no choice but to allow other people to come into my life, into my space, and carry me and hold me. And I feel like that's a huge, huge part of why I made it. And then I know myself, and I know other addicts and alcoholics, one of the things that happens to us is we have a lot of grief and shame. We have a lot of guilt and remorse for the way that we've lived our lives and the
mm,
behaviors we had during our drinking addiction. And I was in no exception. So imagine, having that guilt and that shame, and then permanently losing one of your children. You have
right.
no way to make it up. You have no way to, for them to see you stay sober, to see you grow. So for me, I think that finality and understanding that if I were to turn that grief and that shame and that guilt inward, I'm going to go back to drinking. We think that the best way to stay sober is to chastise ourselves, is to
Mm,
berate ourselves, is to get mad at ourselves and belittle ourselves. And to be honest with you, that's the worst thing we could do, because all that does is lead to more use, more drinking, because we put ourselves in so much pain, we can't figure out how to get out of all that negative talk that we tell ourselves. So I think, like, I was at the point where I knew that I could never make it up to him, that he would never see me change. He would never see me, be successfully sober more than he had, which he had for the last 2.5 years. But that it was such a permanent thing that I realized, like, the only thing that I can do is release that guilt, release that shame, and then I'll wake up every day and stay sober. Wake up every day and be that person that if and when I ever do get to have my little grandson in my life again, that I'll be the best version of myself
Mm,
that anybody could ever, hope for a grandma. So that's the only way that I can, show my son now that I'm a good mom, that I'm going to take good care of my grandson, that, like, I'm going to honor him, that I'm going to fight for him, I'm going to fight for my grandson. So it's by waking up and staying sober. So I think, to answer your question, for people who are in active addiction or trying to stay sober, please, please, please don't call yourself names. Don't say ugly things to yourself. Don't, put yourself into a corner where you are so mean and nasty to yourself that you have no choice but to then drown it with the booze or with the drugs, or, whatever it is that you're addicted in. Because all that does
right.
is cycle you and make you more mad at yourself and more ashamed. And, we have to reach the point where we don't do that. And it's usually by leaning on other people, who've been
Right.
there, done that, and people who aren't going to shame you.
Jackie, girl, you have said so much, but the part, I mean, I love that you stated not to shame yourself. Like, get rid of that shame, release that shame, especially for those who have been, addicted or are currently addicted. Just because you have, you're going through that doesn't mean that you have to continue to beat yourself down. But you also mentioned allowing people to hold you, allowing yourself to be held. And that, do people even hug anymore? I really want to know, like, are we still in a world where people hug, genuinely hug? Because a hug for someone who is in need of it can do
Yeah.
so much. It can do so much. So I thank you for sharing that, because I don't think people understand the power of a hug, the power of
Yeah.
being held.
Yeah. I just wouldn't be sitting here today in front of you if I hadn't gone so far down that I let people, like, literally physically hold me up most time, for months there for a while, and kick that pride of, I have to be tough, I have to be doing this on my own. Because, when your kid gets shot 9 times and your grandkid gets taken by the courts, nobody expects for you to be tough. They all, and so, like, just allowing that and allowing the people in my life to love me and to hold me, I'm telling you, it made a huge difference, and probably the reason why I'm here today.
You are so strong, Jackie. You are so strong, because anyone else could have been angry with the world. They could have shut themselves. You could have shut yourself down. You could have done everything, but you decided to go against everything that you knew. Do you know how
Yeah,
amazing that is?
I
Like,
hope
it's
so.
okay to pat yourself in the back. Like, it's okay.
I hope so. I did have a lot of help, and I had a lot of moments. And so, the book is called From Murder to Messages. And, that's just the murder part. But the messages part are really why I'm okay. The messages part are really why I didn't drink myself to death afterwards, or rage against her, or her, whatever. Don't get me wrong. I definitely did my share as far as trying to change things and, things like that. But mostly, I learned so much about life after death. I learned
Let's talk about that.
so,
Let's talk about
yes,
that.
please. Yeah.
So tell me the message. You said the message is where everything began to shift. So tell me about the message. Why is that the most important factor? Well, not the most important factor, but the factor that you want to share and feel like people need to hear.
Yeah, I think it is, for me, the most important factor,
Okay.
because um, I did survive this, and I did, I would have to say, expand from this. I did grow from this, and I did.
Mm-hmm.
My heart changed from this a lot. And instead of changing to the negative and to the angrier, changed more into, like, understanding and love and hope. Because, in the book I wrote, I'll tell you, the first sign that really changed shifted me a little bit, I would say. I did have my grandson for a little bit, like I was telling you, I think about
Mm-hmm.
2 or 3 months I had, custody of him, and I was with him. And a frisbee went on top of the roof, and I got a ladder up there, and I looked and looked and looked for this frisbee, and we had some tires on top of the roof, and it was like for lightning strikes, to kind of like buffer that. And man, I didn't climb on the roof and walk around on it, but I did move the ladder all the way around, and I did not find that frisbee anywhere. And to be honest with you, it was a little bit of a bummer because I was playing in the front yard with my grandson, and it was so heavy, it was just so full of grief. And we were going to the court, and I knew I wasn't going to get to keep him. And so he and I, we
Right.
had a smile on our face, and the dogs were jumping around. And just for a brief moment, my kid wasn't dead, my grandson wasn't going to be gone, I didn't have all these things. It was just this normal throwing frisbees to each other, and just a little joyful moment. And I was so sad and frustrated that the frisbee was up there, that I couldn't find it, that I couldn't see it, that we couldn't continue to do what we were doing, to where, I felt better for a minute. And I was coming down the ladder, and I looked up, and I said, Dev, if you're really out there, then why don't you get that frisbee for us? And then I just was like, you dumb Jackie, and well, the next morning I got up to take my little grandson to school, and right in front of their car, where I had to literally walk over the frisbee, like hundreds of feet away from, wherever it would have flown off from where it's at on the roof, was that frisbee.
Wow.
And I took a picture of it, and I just, like, I started to get a little bit of a tingle, and I was like, my heart kind of got bigger for a minute, and I was like, and then all the negative stuff starts kicking in, like, oh, an animal could have got it out of the tire, or you're just, you're just making it up, or you're coping.
Right.
That was really, like, maybe a couple months after he first passed, where I was like, I paid enough attention to it that I actually documented it, so it meant something at the time. And then from there, those signs, they just kept getting bigger and bigger, and I was feeling that unworthiness because of how I raised him, and because of, I was losing the custody over his son. I wasn't even going to be able to help keep his memory alive with his child. I was really feeling beat up, like a failure. And he just kept giving me these signs, though, and they reached a point where I could hear him. I could hear him. And I thought, well, I'm making it up. I thought I'm just doing what I had to do as a grieving mom, to cope. And
Right.
so I started writing everything down that I thought I was hearing him say. But I didn't think it was him. I thought this is what he would say to me if he were alive. And I would hear it come in his funny voice, and he was making jokes all the time, and he'd make fun of me. We had a funny relationship. He picked on me a lot. And so I would hear him making fun of me. I don't know what it was, but I was doing a lot of traveling. I was driving, and I would drive 14, 15 hours at a time. I'd go from one family member's house to another family member's house. And there's something about going into a restaurant, and I think it's because I'd been alone in the car for all all that time. And then I stepped out, and I'm around people again. I'm in the restaurant. I would start to cry a lot.
Wow.
Like, I mean, the tears, I couldn't stop it. Like, the waitress would look at me, and I'd just, like, start crying. And, so I would hear him say stuff, and I'd want to write it down. And I'm in the restaurant, I'm crying. He's like, Mom, you're getting boogers everywhere. So if there was a napkin next to me, I'd write it down, and I'd go, if Devyne were alive, he'd say, Mom, you're getting boogers everywhere. Or, if I stubbed my toe, I'd hear, ha, ha, ma. And I'd stop what I was doing with my toe killing me, and I'd write down, if Devyne were alive, he'd say, ha, ha, ma. It was just this weird, I was just compelled to do this. And then, so later I took an automatic writing class and realized I had been automatic writing with Devyne all that time and just didn't know what it was. And so I can hear him a lot, and I write down what he's saying. So I've got I thought I was going crazy, but I'm not. It's literally, I've learned so much. He's taught me so much about where our consciousness goes and how we really do survive death and what God's like and what happens to us after we die. And, just all these, I mean, miraculous, amazing things that I knew nothing about, nothing, zero. I had a lot of programming in me and a lot of people who thought they talked to dead people were crazy and they wore tin hats and all the psychics
Right.
and mediums were just trying to rip their shysters and trying to rip people off. So and then I had a big religious. I wasn't even I wasn't brought up religious, but I did go to church as an adult. And that did help me overcome drug addiction and things like that. And then I had a lot of this religious stuff in me too, and so
Religious programming.
yeah, I had so much programming in me. I couldn't believe it, and it blocked me a lot. It blocked me from accepting these beautiful, beautiful signs he was giving me. It blocked me from, these synchronicities and all this stuff because I was just so programmed. But he just never stopped trying. He
I love
just
that.
never stopped giving me those signs ever. I have tons of them that I put in the book that I documented with photos and everything.
So I love the fact that you stated you wrote them down despite of what you were feeling, right? But you also mentioned automatic writing. Can you explain to me and our listeners what that is? Because I'm not sure what that is.
Yeah, so I guess there's, some people, there's a couple different forms. For me, I get up really early in the morning. It's before I've even had a cup of coffee. And let me tell you, I don't even know what my name is before I've had a cup of coffee. And, I just get really, really quiet. And I just, I breathe and I breathe into my heart a lot, and I just, all of a sudden I just kind of feel different. You just kind of feel lifted up. You just feel like you're more than just a human being. You're kind of like, almost like you're everything. You just
Mm-hmm.
feel like you're one with, even the blades of grass outside. And it didn't start out like that, don't get me wrong. But I mean, you cultivate this, right? And then I write in cursive and, I'll write to Devin, I'll write about what my morning was like or what happened yesterday and, what I wish happened and, where I'm at in my life right now or what good things are happening too. And then I'll ask him if he has any messages and I will hear it's pretty direct, and it'll be things I promise you, things I don't know, things I never spiritual concepts that religious concepts, things like that I would have never ever known, and I just write it down word for word for word, and
Wow.
it's yeah, and it can be these very beautiful, like it's really oftentimes extraordinarily poetic. And then sometimes it's like, Ma, get your shit together. Like yesterday, you cried all day, and today you really got to pick yourself up, Mama. You got to go to work. You got to do this. You got to do that. But then sometimes it's just really beautiful, really concepts about heaven, concepts about science. I'm not a science person whatsoever, but he talks to me a lot about science and where science and like quantum physics and quantum
Mm-hmm.
entanglement and string theory, where all that plays into, our consciousness and where we go when we die. Yeah.
I love science. I swear I hate that I stopped going to school because science would have been it. It would have
So
been it. But
I'm not sciencey at all. I made it through the 8th grade. That's it. When I was young, I mean, I, went later in my life, went back and got a GED and stuff like that. But so it's just not part of my wheelhouse. But he's like taught me so much things, and then I know that I'll be, something really great will happen, a sign will happen, and I'll go, oh, this is so magical. And I see him and hear him in my mind. He's like, nah, it's science, and he'll start like writing out these math equations and stuff. And I'm like, no, it's not, it's magic.
I love that. And so, what brought you into the practice of going into automatic writing? Was it your Reiki journey? What was it that all of us like? Did you randomly just say, "Let me do this," or were you guided to do that? Like, what led you to
Well, yeah. So, I mean, first of all, I want to say like Reiki is a huge part of my journey. And I recommend Reiki for anybody on the face of this earth. Um, about 8 months after Devin was killed, I met another mom who had also lost her son, and she gave me a Reiki session.
Okay.
And oh, for the first time in 8 months, I breathed. I
Mm,
felt a little bit of peace. I felt a little bit of reprieve. And I just said to myself, I don't know what this is, but I want to learn it and I want to give it to other moms, other parents. And that's a big part of my story. And I went all the way through. I'm a Reiki master teacher, and I definitely give Reiki to other grieving parents. That's a big part of my life right now. But no, the
awesome.
automatic writing itself, I feel like, I was just so pushed to do it,
Hmm. Right.
even when I didn't understand it. And then what happened was, um, through like Reiki and stuff, I heard other people talking about automatic writing, and
Okay.
I sort of put it together. And so I took an automatic writing course, and I was like, oh my gosh, I've been doing this whole time, but I hadn't been realizing that it was coming really from him and not just me trying to make myself feel better. And so then it just became more intentional. Then
Right.
that's when I was like really understanding how to, let go of the rest of the world and just listen to him only. And
Hmm.
that's when it became quite a bit more poetic. And then he would write to me and he would say, I want this for you, mom. And then all of a sudden it went to we. There was like a higher beings collection of angels and stuff, and he would come through and it was I, but then it was we. And that's when the writings would really change, really become more poetic, more, bigger spiritually, with concepts. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey, that part of it.
Wow. I love that. I love that your situation led you to go into this spiritual route, which was always there within you because you said you had some that you went to church, but your consciousness began to open as you began to really just sit with yourself. And I think that's so important because a lot of people they don't want to sit with themselves, especially after such tragedy. They want to distract themselves with drugs, with TV, with different things, but you completely just said I need to sit with myself. And that allowed you to enter into this journey that you are in now. And so, Jackie, so good, so good, so good. If someone was listening and they were in the middle of hell right now, what would you want them to know that is still possible for them?
I want them to know that they can come through this, that there truly is light at the end of that tunnel, that there are people. The world seems so cold and so damaged right now, but there are truly people that love them, that they might not even know them, but they care about them, they love them, they care about their situation, they want to take their hand and help them walk through it. Like there are people who will send encouragement to them, that will send prayer and love. And like I feel like we get so down and we can't see those kind of people, but I promise you we're out there. And I had that given to me, and now I really make an effort to give that to other people, even if I don't know you. If I hear something and I understand that you must be in the darkest time of your life, I will like send love to you. I will, my heart will open up and I will send, empathy to you. And I think that just if people just knew that there were other people, other humans who understood what they were going through, who cared about their lives, who cared about their, how everything turned out for them, I think that people would feel a lot better.
I love that. I love that. That's why I do this. This is why I do podcasting because I like to help people to understand that there is light at the end of the tunnel. There is always hope. We always have a choice on what we set our minds to. And yes, there are times that it is easier said than done, but we just have to keep our mind open, our eyes open, and even our hearts open to be able to receive and acknowledge the things that are around us to help us get to that next level, to help us see the good or the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. And it isn't always easy, that's for sure.
No,
You
no,
know,
it's not.
and so when it's like that, that's when it's so important to know
Mm,
that there's something out there bigger than you. There's something out there higher than you, whether you want to call it God, the universe, source, your higher self, the higher power. There's something out there bigger than you, and you can give them everything that is burdening you, and they
mhm.
can help you. Like you don't have to do it alone. So
Right.
sometimes we just don't have the courage or the energy, to have a discussion between one person and another person. I mean, I don't know if anybody's ever felt like that, but you're just so beat down and so tired. The thought of opening your mouth and letting words come out and having a conversation with somebody else, it can feel exhausting. So you can have that same energy exchange, that same conversation with something else higher than you, and you don't have to feel how hard it is to be in conversation with another human being. And so if you're at that point, then just go right there, just go to your angels, go to your higher self, whatever it is that you believe, even if you only believe in science,
Hmm.
start talking to, um, that algebra equation or whatever that
Right.
would answer your whole question to the universe. Start talking to it. Just make sure that you um understand that there's something else out there that you can share your burdens with when you're too tired to talk to another human.
Right. I completely agree. And I like the fact that you mentioned that because just the other day I was saying to myself, I don't know why people shun upon people speaking to themselves. Like I talk to myself all the time. And because I talk to myself, I really get answers. And it's not me answering, it's God answering, it's my higher self answering. And so I
Mhm.
want our listeners to know like, just because you're talking doesn't mean you're not going crazy, doesn't mean you're going crazy. It just means you literally need to voice out what you're going through, the questions that you have, and they will be answered one way or another. I can promise you that you will get your answer eventually. It might not be right away, but you'll start getting understanding to certain things and certain situations. It happens with me all the time. And so I want our listeners to know that just talk. Like Jackie said, it doesn't have to be with someone else. It doesn't have to be with your neighbor. It doesn't have to be with your mom or whoever. Just talk to yourself and just look and pay attention to the understanding and the answers that you begin to receive.
Yes, absolutely.
Jackie, this has been very, very just heartwarming. Like, well, not heartwarming, heart touching. Like, just your story has been truly just inspirational to see how you have overcome such trauma and such tragedy, and the way that you speak about life. Like, you're excited about it. So, I want to go and transition to our soul snacks. Okay, this is a soul snack part of the show where we kind of just lighten up, right? We were talking about some heavy, deep stuff. And I want you to think of this first thing that comes to your mind, okay?
Okay.
All right, so, all right. What's something that instantly puts you in a better mood on a rough day?
Oh my gosh, a new made bed. Like a bed that's freshly made. The sheet, I don't know why that was the first thing that came in my mind, but yeah, like the sheets are all fresh and smell beautiful, and the comforters all like laid out perfectly. Yeah, that would
I
put me in
love
a better
that.
mood.
I love
And
that.
the
I always try to leave
pillows
my
are all
bed done.
fluffy.
Huh? The pillows?
Yeah, they're all fluffy.
I love that. I love that. Okay, what's your go-to comfort food when life is lifing?
Oh my gosh, I would have to say something, warm and probably potatoes and gravy.
No,
Potatoes and
okay,
gravy,
okay. That
definitely.
sounds good. No chicken, just potatoes and gravy.
Well, I mean, I'm sure there'll be chicken fried steak or something with it, but that's the first thing I thought of was that like beautiful, scoop of potatoes and gravy.
I love that. I love that. Okay, what is one thing that always makes you laugh, no matter how serious the moment?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so um on my Facebook there's a picture of my kids and I have three surviving children, and we're cracking up on Christmas. Well, when my kids were young, we all watched the Twilight. the Twilight
Okay.
series. And I didn't have internet. We lived out in the middle of nowhere. And so we had DVDs. And that's what we did. Like, that's how we entertained ourselves. And there was a commentary on the Twilight series. And it was when Edward the vampire, he was talking over top of the scenes. And it was a scene where, like, he was telling her, like, what do you think vampires eat? But when he did the commentary, he said, cheeseburgers. It's all my kids, all of us, like we just cracked up. So anytime that we're all together now, if anybody says cheeseburgers, we can't. I just can't stop laughing. We all stop laughing, and even after Devin died, like we can all still like remember that one family moment where we all just busted up laughing because he said cheeseburgers.
I love that. I love that. Hold on to that, please. Okay, last one. What's a small everyday joy people might not expect about you?
um, I have a pig. I have
Really?
a pig. His name is Patrick, and he was supposed to be next year's bacon, but I love him so much that he just
No.
runs around like he owns the yard and he can go wherever he wants. And he comes up to me like 20 times a day and winks at me, and I have to give him a snack. And I pet his little belly, and he throws himself on the ground and sticks his feet all up in the air and gets his belly rubs. And that pig brings me so much joy right now that I can't see straight.
No, she said he's supposed to be next year's bacon. No.
He's not. I promise. I can't bear to be without him. I love him so much.
Oh, they're so cute. I think pigs are so cute. They're the cutest little things. All right, Jackie. Well, I have one more segment for you, and then we'll just ask you to share how we can connect with you. So, I believe that everyone has a piece of the puzzle. Everyone has something to contribute to this world. Um, what's something about, I'm sorry, what piece of the puzzle have you encountered anyone or anything that has been a piece of puzzle in your life that has contributed to your healing?
I mean, there are so many I couldn't even like begin to describe it because that's exactly what I feel like. I feel like I've had, and I talk about it in the book a lot. Devin has brought me specific people in specific, situations, and they're all these big pieces of a puzzle
Mm,
that feel they're like putting me back together again. So, I mean, I think 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I was just like this outline of a person, and I might have had a puzzle piece in my heart, but there was 16 pieces around that were missing. And from this whole, time since Devin's passed, he keeps finding these people, bringing them to me, and they put another piece of puzzle on
oh,
me. So I mean, I would have a really hard time bringing that down to just one. And I actually have a whole chapter in the book about like the people he's brought to me and what they've done and how they've helped me heal.
amazing. Okay, so tell us about your book. Tell us about when it was released, obviously, what led to the book, and where we can find it.
The book is on Amazon. It's called From Murder to Messages, and it has some of Devin's automatic writing in it. But he started showing me an image in my mind of this book, and the cover of the book, the topic of the book, and he was so cute because when he would show me the image, it had a New York Times bestseller on it. Um, and it's an Amazon bestseller, but still, I still have
Love
this little
it.
ring that he showed me, and it really was um within a year of him passing that this book cover started showing up, and there were things that were happening in my life that just had to be written down. And I would see them in my mind as I would go to sleep at night, and there'd be paragraphs of experiences that I was having, or just the doubts that I would have if something miraculous would
Mm,
happen. That he'd send me this miracle sign, and then I would be like shutting it down, like because of science or religion or
mhm.
whatever. So
Right.
um, yeah, I think that the book was always supposed to come out, and I actually wrote it fairly quickly. I wrote it over this summer. And then we got it edited and launched and stuff on December 16th, which was his death date. And it is an Amazon bestseller and launched in a couple of different best-selling categories. And they can get on Amazon. I'm self-published, so I'm also in the process of figuring out how to make sure it can be on all the platforms like Barnes and Nobles and things like that. But for right now, you can get it on Amazon, and it's also in paperback. So
Let's see it.
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's also in paperback. This was the one I got to proofread to make sure it was good to go to the public.
Love it. I love it. Jackie, thank you so much. How can our listeners connect with you? Do you have a website? Do you have social media? Let us know.
Okay. Yeah, I have a website. It's jackiesuzanne.com, and they can book a Reiki session with me, and they can book an intuitive session, because that was definitely something that came out of all of this. I did not realize that I was just very psychic. And so it is very helpful, when doing any healings and things like that. Sometimes people just need some answers to their practical life first, and then we can do some energy healing. And I also have a Facebook site. It's Light After Darkness. Do a lot of grief healing in there, a lot of free healings, just a community.
Awesome. And I'll definitely share that within the description of the episode. And thank you so much, Jackie. I cannot wait to hear what else you do. I can't wait to hear your story shared across the universe, throughout the world. This has truly been an honor and a blessing to me. And I know that it's going to bless a lot of other women, mothers, fathers who have lost their loved ones and their sons or daughters, especially. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. Until next time, guys, this was so inspirational, so deep, so just, it touched my heart, my soul. I was in little tears earlier because of the story and how everything unfolded. But Jackie took her grief and she turned it into a message, and now she is thriving. And though those moments of grief, I'm sure, come up for her all the time, she doesn't allow it to consume her. She continues to become and connect with her higher self. So I hope that you have received so much inspiration from this story. And until next time, I'm your coach and your host, Giovanna Cirillo.